I know you're used to hearing me talk about hardcore and metal stuff, but actually one of the best studio experiences I ever had was being able to sit in on a session with the Jonas Brothers in 2007 when one of the records was getting made in Toronto. I learned a ton. It really impacted the quality of my work and workflow. I mean, this record ended up going platinum. It was mixed by Chris Lord-Alge, so huge learning experiences, and I'm gonna tell you the big 3 lessons I learned from being in on that session. I've got to clear it up. These guys and this record is the real deal. So just because it's mainstream pop and teenage girls are crazy about them doesn't mean there's not great musicianship on the record and great songwriting. You know, I was there in person. I can tell you that these guys are great singers. The vocal performances are unreal. The songwriting is great. The production is good. And this is this is a real pop rock record. It's real drums. It's real guitar, bass, piano, everything. It's the real deal. So check it out. It's their second full-length record, and some of these songs are still on my mix reference playlist, and I listen to some of these songs still for inspiration for production ideas if I'm working on this type of music. I just want to clear that up. You know, don't write this off. This stuff is the real deal, and these guys are really talented. So the producer and engineer on this record was John Fields. He's also worked with Jimmy Eat World, Switchfoot, some other great records, and he was the one who was up in Toronto. They flew him in. He was producing and engineering the thing along with a couple session players, for guitars and drums. So while I really appreciated the songwriting and the talent of the actual Jonas Brothers themselves, really what I learned was from watching John Fields' work. All right, the first huge lesson I learned from sitting in on this session is the importance of working fast. So let me explain the tracking setup. So they came in on day 1 and he had already sent a list, based on what we had at the studio. He sent a list of the mics that we were going to be using for each, instrument, each part of the kit. And so we had all of that kind of pulled out and patched in already for him. We went and rented some gear that he, wanted that we didn't have. And when they arrived, he just set up the entire live room with every single instrument. So we, set up the drums, mic'd all the drums up, had it all ready to go, which was he did very quickly, by the way. And same with guitars, piano. We had a little station for percussion, a vocal station, everything was mic'd up and ready to go. So that was huge for me because I was used to doing one instrument at a time, which they did, but I was used to, setting up the drums, tearing it down, setting up the guitar amps. And if we needed to change to a different guitar amp, then you set up that one at that time and all that stuff and just linearly moving through it. Whereas they had everything set up on day 1 so that when we actually started tracking, everything was ready to go. So, if we were tracking drums, drummer just goes in there, we're recording drums right away. No tweaking anything, no setting up anything new. And then when drums are done and it's time to track something else, you just grab the bass, pick it up, and we're ready to go. Oh, I have an idea for guitar. Pick up the guitar, lay it down, or let's put a shaker here. And then it's just instantly in there with the shaker. Same with the piano. It was very efficient. All the setup was done first. And from then on, it was super quick and easy to execute any idea or lay down any part with a moment's notice. And the way he actually mic'd stuff was extremely quick and simple. So I was used to, debating where I should put the mic, listening first, changing it, tweaking, maybe trying a different mic. But man, I was shocked, especially with the guitars, where he just had the guitar cab there, and he's like, I want a 57 and a Royal ribbon, and he just put them up on the cab and spent maybe 1 minute on it, literally 1 minute, and never changed it after that. Very quick, clear decisions when tracking and when setting up mic placement. Of course, this comes from years and years of experience, just knowing what works. But again, there was no second guessing, there was no gear shootouts, there was no debating, which mic to use. It's just, he knew what worked, he knew it was gonna get the sound he wanted, and he just put it up quickly and just get on with the important work of actually performing and capturing the takes. Fun fact, this guitar, my Gibson Les Paul, was actually used on one of the songs on the record when they needed one. I said, I have a Gibson, brought it in, and he played it the next day. I can't say for sure if it made it onto the record, but I'm pretty sure this guitar is on a platinum record. Now, the whole idea of working fast kind of leads into the number 2 biggest lesson I learned, which is editing on the fly. So it blew my mind watching John engineer this record because he would literally be tracking something else. So someone would be playing a guitar take or lead guitar or something. John played most of the guitar and bass on the record, but we did have other people playing lead layers and such. And literally as that recording is happening on the screen, he's somewhere else editing together a take while also listening to what's being laid down. So he's literally doing 2 things at once, editing something else listening to another take get laid down, and it was just like, it just blew my mind. Like there was never a down moment. Like he was able to get this stuff down so quickly, and I'm talking like from zero to a finished like radio ready pop rock production in one like 8-hour day. Like that's what was happening here, and it's because there was no downtime. Like he was always doing something on the screen. So if he was waiting for someone to take care of an issue with the performance or whatever, or waiting for the drummer to get ready to start tracking, he was doing something on the screen. There was no downtime. There was no separation of like, I'm gonna start editing this later. It was always on the fly. Like immediately after a take was laid down, if it needed a little edit, it happened right there. And then he moved on, no going back to stuff, and always doing like multiple things at once and making sure that it's just like so efficient and happening like lightning fast. It kind of blew my mind how fast he was doing everything. The DAW, which was Pro Tools, it never interrupted the session. He was in complete control of it, and there was, like I said, never downtime, never a slowdown because of anything technical. So the third lesson that I'm gonna share with you from watching John work on this Jonas Brothers record was tracking towards a mix. So the way I used to work prior to this was, I would be tracking a band and I'd get all the source sounds, as good as I could, and I would always continue on with tracking before I stopped to actually process or mix anything or to improve the sound at all. So what I ended up with at the end of the tracking stage was like pretty messy sounding, didn't really sound like a finished record, and the difference, between that and the final mix was like pretty drastic. Now, in contrast, the way John was working is he had plugins on everything right from the get-go, even while tracking. And this is why I love Pro Tools HD and any system that uses, extra processing so that you can actually run plugins in real time with no latency. That's why I upgraded to an HD system very soon after that, because the flexibility is amazing. You can track through the plugins, listening to, you can have 5 plugins in the chain while you're tracking with no latency, which is cool. Now with native setups, it's a little harder to do that, but you can still do it with some plugins. But anyways, that was a total shift from the way I was working, because everything he was tracking as it was being laid down, it sounded like almost like a finished record. So in the room every day, by the end of the day, it sounded almost like it was at least 80%, if not 90% as good as a final mix would sound. Everything from delay and reverb effects on guitars and just doing EQ and lots of compression on stuff that, needed to sound better. And I realized that it really was inspiring, because you're hearing like a really great sounding product and you're not having all this stuff in your head of like, okay, yeah, I know that sounds muddy, but I'll clean that up later. Or, yeah, I know this is really dry, it needs some delay, but I'll do that in the mix. It was happening right there, and that inspired better performances, and it inspired new ideas and better ideas and adding more stuff. And it was just like a great way to work. I started doing that right away, and my productions got way better, and it just was more fun to work that way in the studio when you're hearing something that sounds great and inspiring. And like I said off the top, this record was mixed by Chris Lord-Alge, and I gotta tell you, like, I was expecting to pop that CD in. Yeah, this was back in the day with CDs. I went and bought it at the store. I was expecting to pop it in and hear like a completely different sounding production, but honestly, I was like, wow, this sounds pretty much like what I heard in the control room. Like, yeah, it was a little more polished sounding, a little more exciting, more energy, but the actual tones and everything, like that's how they sounded in the studio. So tracking towards a mix, not leaving everything for later. Like, if you want something to sound squashed with compression, then do it right there. And if something's muddy, it's got too much low end or high end, like filter it out right there, add effects, do it on the fly. It's all about keeping the vibe up and, knowing what you're going for. If you've got a vision for what it should sound like, in the end, do as much as you can in the moment while you're tracking, keep the energy up, and that's gonna benefit your productions big time. So to sum it all up, guys, working fast and efficiently was the biggest thing that stood out to me watching this session. And not working fast by neglecting important things, but just by having the skill and just focusing on what actually mattered. Not endless mic shootouts or, getting stuck making decisions on how you're gonna capture something. It was just quick, clear decision making. And I gotta be honest, it kills me to see or hear about engineers who it's a common practice to shoot out 3 or 4 vocal mics on a singer before they start tracking and spend an hour doing that and expect that the singer is gonna be able to deliver great performances after all that. Like, don't be that guy, just make your decisions quick, stick with what works, and remember, It's not about whether you use an SM7 or a U87, it's about how good is the performance, and you've got to keep that energy and that vibe there. Don't ever be the one who is slowing down your sessions. I wanted to share these stories and these lessons with you guys because it's these types of experiences that help you take big leaps forward in the quality of your work and your skill and the way that you work in the studio. And I find that just these little like isolated tips, they're great for learning stuff, but it's just like you're making small incremental moves forward. Whereas when you get a chance to actually just watch a project happen from start to finish, whether it's a mix or a tracking session, it's just like there's so many things that lead to breakthroughs in that way. Now, luckily today you can do that with the internet. You can watch courses and things are just getting better and better. You're getting that kind of access without having to, go be an intern at a big studio, which is hard to get. You clean toilets, all that stuff. You can now get that access online, which is what I'm trying to do with this channel and with my website, hardcoremusicstudio.com. I've made some premium courses covering mixing, editing, tracking, where I try to give you exactly that same kind of experience that I had that gave me those big leaps forward, not just the little tiny incremental steps. So if you're interested in those premium courses, I open them up periodically throughout the year, but you've got to be on my email list to get notified about those. So go to makebetterrecords.com, sign up to the email list. That's where you're going to learn about the courses that I have available as they become available. You're also going to get all of my best free content through the email list, and I'm going to send you my free mixing cheat sheet, which is basically a quick reference guide for EQ and compression, the best starting points for each part of your mix. So makebetterrecords.com, jump on the list. It's the best place to follow me and get notified of all the new stuff I'm up to. And also make sure you subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Hit the big red button, subscribe, and give me a thumbs up, leave a comment. I love hearing from you guys, and thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.